The filmmaker has helmed blockbuster films such as Man of Steel and 300. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. The second part of Zack Snyder's epic space opera Rebel Moon is all set to release on Netflix on April 19th. A follow-up to last year's Part 1, A Child of Fire, the second part titled Part 1, The Scargiver continues the journey of Korra and her fight against the Motherworld. The two-part epic came on the heels of Snyder's last film with Netflix, Army of the Dead. Zack Snyder has always tackled big-scale productions in his filmography. Beginning his career as a director with a remake of Dawn of the Dead, the filmmaker has made numerous blockbusters such as 300, Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Watchmen. While Snyder has a penchant for large-scale epics, he mentioned to FandomWire what kind of film he wanted to explore with his next project. Zack Snyder's filmography is filled with large-scale, high-concept blockbuster films. From his debut with Dawn of the Dead to kickstarting the DCU with Man of Steel, the filmmaker has worked on increasing budgets and has constantly dealt with VFX and CGI-heavy projects. Even in his last few projects, such as Rebel Moon, he has amped up the scale. While he has spent the last few years on Netflix's Rebel Moon, Snyder mentioned that he would want to tackle a smaller film with his next project. Talking to Elliot Franklin from FandomWire, Snyder mentioned that he never plans things on what is next and that he did not have any particular project in mind. He said that his team mostly goes with what they think is cool at the time. However, he mentioned that he would love to go small on his next project and not have to create everything on set. But I would love to do a kind of a small movie right now. I'm in the mood to do something small and shot on location. Something a little bit more manageable, after doing this giant, shooting a movie where nothing exists and where you have to make it all up. It'd be fun to find a cool location and film something that is there. According to Variety, both parts of Rebel Moon are estimated to have cost $83 million each, bringing it to a collective total of $166 million. Zack Snyder has been invested in the Rebel Moon universe for the past 3 years, with the movie first being announced in 2021. The filmmaker decided to collaborate with Netflix again after the success of his zombie heist film Army of the Dead. Snyder had just come off of tackling the DCU debacle and had released his much-awaited Zack Snyder's Justice League. While Snyder has been making Rebel Moon for the past 3 years, he revealed to FandomWire that he had been working on the universe since he was a child and that he was particularly inspired by epic sci-fi space operas. He also mentioned that he was inspired by Heavy Metal magazine, which regularly included sci-fi anthologies and dark fantasy stories. Of course, as I've mentioned famously, Heavy Metal magazine, that's a really big influence. You can really see it in movie too. The filmmaker also revealed that his favorite scenes to film were the climactic battle from Part 1, A Child of Fire, that takes place on the planet Velt, as well as the scene where Charlotte Maggie's character Sam under the weight of too much melodramatic slow-motion storylines, and it simply needs to stop. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. The world that Zack Snyder comes from is stuffed with lore-driven drama, mature sensibilities, and dark imagination. His work reflects those traits in abundance, despite there being enough opportunities to go so completely campy in his artistic style that it would threaten even David Cronenberg's reputation in the field. But Snyder doesn't take the bait. He would rather be the master of dramatic storytelling that presents itself as an epic Greek tragedy than serve up a generic film that gets lost among the stampede of 1,000 other films coming off of Hollywood's factory lineup. It is this obstinate ambition to tell the greatest of stories in whichever genre he picks up, be it historical fiction like 300, comic adaptation like Watchmen, or a zombie apocalypse film like Dawn of the Dead, that often leads to a divisive cult classic hit. With grim, color-graded, dark vignettes marring every frame of heavy artillery dialogue, slow-motion action, and deep insightful monologues, Zack Snyder's films either hit the bullseye or his aesthetic vision completely turns off the viewers. In the recent past, Zack Snyder has been trampled, cursed out, exiled, and exorcised from the industry so completely that the fans who gathered in his support turned hostile in his defense. To back him didn't just mean supporting the director through his hardships, but also protecting his vision for DCU's future. The more that dream was shoved aside by Warner Brothers, the more ardent his fans would get in trying to get the project back on track until Justice League finally took a stand and came out successful in 2021. The shared shock and trauma from the 5-year-long incident evolved the director's image to a godlike figure to his community of undaunted, unbiased, and unwavering followers, a trait that has often earned them the nickname Snyder cultists by the opposition in online forums. But the aftermath of Rebel Moon saw even such loyal fans limiting their quota of praise reserved for the director. The Netflix film, which was supposed to be Zack Snyder's magnum opus, the masterpiece of the decade, a film unchecked by studio interference or censored by MPAA or slashed to reduce runtime, instead turned out to be a dud. Was this film then a one-off flop by Snyder who, for the record, has never failed to deliver cult classic hits, no matter how divisive? Or was Rebel Moon only the latest in a long line of films that showed off all the traits that combine to make a pure, unadulterated Zack Snyder classic? Zack Snyder's films have consistently delivered on a grand scale, no matter the genre or tone of storytelling. Be it comic adaptations, historical fiction, a zombie apocalypse film, or Star Wars-inspired jargon, each of Snyder's movies has been a fully formed visionary tale of epic character arcs filled with conflict, melodrama, and war. But while films like 300 inspire awe and terror over the nightmarish glimpse into Spartans and their logic-defying war against the Persians, the same defiant tone and ambition of underdogs waging war against an empire become grating to the nerves while watching Rebel Moon. The primary reason why Snyder's range shifts from his 2006 historical epic to the 2023 Netflix space opera is his increasing dependency on dramatic effects to add depth to his story rather than a focus on the story itself. When it comes to cinematography, Zack Snyder has always been a fan of long soul-cutting stares and dramatic silhouettes against a larger-than-life scenic backdrop. But such thematics never hampered his storytelling because they were used judiciously and with restraint. However, with time, the director has loosened up his reins. His films are now populated, haunted, and plagued by melodramatic slow-motion action sequences. Starting from the death of Superman to, quite frankly, every frame in Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder forgot to use his favorite tropes sparingly and let loose in the absence of studio interference. As a result, the entire film suffers from an incredulously slow-paced narrative and the audience groans and suffers while the protagonist takes out entire squadrons of enemies in extreme slow motion. While the director has only begun to overindulge in such habits, his flaws can be traced back even to the earliest films. Melodrama and Zack Snyder have never been strangers in this lifetime, but it has remained an overbearing and constant presence casting a shadow over every one of his stories. Although Snyder's aesthetic vision may suffer if one asks him to dial down the dramatic seriousness in his films, it may do the director some good to omit the longing stares, slow-motion action, and cinematic silhouettes in favor of character-building and high-stakes storytelling. Who knows? Maybe he could even narrate the entire story of Rebel Moon within one film if he could just pee. The former DC star Ben Affleck reflected on his decision to drop his Batman film with Deathstroke following his Justice League cameo. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. Ben Affleck, who embodied the Dark Knight in the DCU, opened up about his decision to step away from his solo film, which was expected to feature the formidable villain Deathstroke. Fans were eagerly anticipating